What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Center, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, the Community Addictions Peer Support Association, Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm, the Canadian Research Initiative in Substance Use, Quebec Atlantic Node, and Carter's Counseling. Tonight's guest, person in recovery, Justin Heflin, from Kalamazoo, Michigan, is here to share his inspiring story, and we are going to meet him right after this.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years, I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work, and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, let us bring in Justin. What's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you feeling?
Good. More grounded now, so.
Yeah, the countdown helps a little bit, doesn't it, hey?
It does.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started tonight?
Just blessing to be here, man. Thank you. I seen as the countdown was going on, my fiance was there, my stepdaughter was there, and a couple friends, so I appreciate that.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get started. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about what it was like growing up?
Okay. Man, so my mom and my dad divorced, and I'd be lying if I could give a direct age, somewhere around 2 years old. She got married shortly after that. Not to the nicest man. It's kind of hell. I remember he was, the physical part, he was physically abusive, but I think the mental aspect and emotional aspect he put me through was the worst of it.
Yeah.
And then I had, my dad's side of the family, which I was always loved being there. They were very loving when I made it over there. But.
So when we talked earlier, you mentioned from a very young age that you really didn't have a concept of God. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So there's two incidences in my childhood that ring a bell of any kind of thing about God. I remember once we went to this church that was, I don't even know, maybe Catholic, or I just remembered walking in and there was just like this reverence, this holiness about this place. Like, I was just awed by it. I don't know how else to explain that part. I just knew it was a place I was supposed to be on my best behavior at, and it was just like stunning. It was beautiful. The stained glass windows, the little, fountain of water in there, the benches, all of it was just a beautiful atmosphere. That's the only memory I have of something good. My stepdad
regarding God.
I did, but I didn't even tie that into God at that point. I just had this image in my head of being there, and it just felt good and right and a good place. I was like different. It was different from everything else I knew. So
Mm-hmm. So,
And then,
what was your, like, the family concept of God? I understand your stepfather said some pretty dark things about the devil at a young age.
yeah, so like I said, he was cruel, man. One incident, he had me convinced that the devil was real, that the devil took bad kids and I was a bad kid, and that, amongst other things he told me, but he had me convinced one night that the devil was real and tied in some red with that somehow. I seen shows obviously as a kid that portrayed the devil or something on TV, but he had me struck with fear that the devil was going to come get me. And then he sent me down to the basement to sleep where my room was at, but he wouldn't let me use a nightlight. So I was down there in the dark, and I don't know what kind of light he used, but he was shining like a little like a flashlight. And actually, I don't know there used to be those play school lights that show like a regular light, then a red light, and you could flip over to, I think, green light. And that could have been what he used, now that I think of it.
Diabolical.
Which kind of, what was that?
It's nothing. Sorry.
Okay. He shined it down on the floor, and man, it had me freaked out. Like, I was terrified. And this was directly after this conversation that the devil was going to come get me because I was such a bad kid and no one loved me. And that's what happened. The devil, came and took kids like that. And, I was screaming and screaming, and it struck fear. And I'd run upstairs and he'd scream at me to get back down there and threaten to beat my ass. And like, dude, it was so bad. I was screaming so much, like our neighbor came over to check on me, and he pretty much, I guess, assuming told her I was just being bad and I was forced to go to bed and I didn't want to go to bed or something. But yeah, I'll never forget that, man. Cause like I was convinced that that was the devil, showing up to come get me, and terrified me.
Yeah. Was there substance use at home?
So I didn't find out until later on. Not that I recognized. I know my mom drank little wine coolers here and there, but I found out later on that he had been the whole time like huffing paint and things of that nature. She had caught him doing that, and so that might have played a part there. But I didn't really recognize at that age, like using, him using or her using or anything like that. Which she worked a lot anyway, so.
Mm-hmm. So there was a situation, or maybe more than one, where your stepdad said some crazy things to the kids at school and stuff like that. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so one incident I remember for sure is like we were walking back home, and he knew I hated him at that point. I loathed him. He was a dick, and we were pretty far off from him. Yeah, and he told me a bunch of kids from the apartment complex were playing basketball, and he's like, go tell him how much you hate me. Go tell him. And I felt like it was a trick. I didn't want to, but he pretty much forced me to go tell him. So I ran up and, I kind of shyly told him, my stepdad's a dick. I don't like him. And then I came back to him, and he goes, oh, you told him, huh? He goes, all right. And then he walked back up to him and freaking told him all that I pissed the bed every night, which at that time was true. I was probably 7 or 8. I had I peed the bed a lot at a young age. I don't know why, but yeah, it was a lot of shame in that. Hearing him tell all those kids that, and they kind of looked at me differently after that. So.
Yeah. So how was school? Did you make friends easily?
Not in elementary. We were low income, and it's funny to even bring that up, but I was dressed in a lot of like sweatpants and sweatshirts at that time, and I went to a school that was a little stuck up, maybe there's money in that part of the Kalamazoo, and see, I got picked on a lot, and I'd get to school, that was my safe space to get away from home, but then I didn't even want to go there, because then through elementary it was hell, and then about middle school it started picking up, but at that point I started, acting out a lot more. So
So there was a lot of privilege.
Yes, that's a good way to say it. There was. And even finding out later on and talking to other people that went to the same school, like people on the other side of that fence, like that's something that's kind of taught and ingrained in some schools, like money is the answer to everything. And because you have more money, you're better, right?
Yeah. So how old were you the first time you got loaded?
Like drinking, it was young as sip. I'd say roughly around 12, 13 is when it really kicked off for me, between marijuana and, alcohol. Especially marijuana, man. That was the first thing that really, like, I was still able to somewhat be present, but it took me away from feeling shit, not having to deal with shit at home or just anything.
Yeah. What'd your stepdad, did your parents find out, or did you keep it under wraps, or?
So my sister and me, my older sister, at one point, we stole weed from my aunt, and we ran off to a little park and we got high. And this was probably like a handful of times before this. And my aunt had found out. And so my dad's in there, and this wasn't at my mom's house. This was when I was at my dad's. And like my dad pulled his kids in one at a time and asked us, and it came my turn. And he was like, "I know you smoke. Did you smoke?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "All right." He said, "All right, so I only took one hit or something." And my dad just, "That's one hit for you." Fucking took me right to the ground. And yeah, and it was pretty much on after that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And then, at 13, your mom kicked you out. What happened there?
Yes. Yeah, that was, she divorced my stepdad finally. Like I said, he was he told me every day I was a loser and a failure and no one loved me and shit. She finally caught on to that. And today I can look back and see, I understand why it took time for her to remove herself from that situation. Obviously there's financial things there, but yeah, she divorced him. And by the time we got our own place, I was smoking and drinking and just a dick, man. I was acting out because everything I was put through, I didn't want to be home. I had an autistic brother at home. I was supposed to be getting off the bus and stuff, and I wouldn't even show up at home because I was just so defiant. She finally had enough and booted me out, and I went to go live with my dad.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you started getting in trouble with the law?
I had one incident about the age of 13, 12 possibly, roughly, where I threw like some money or change out at a vehicle. I got like a malicious destruction of private property. And then a while after that, I was out smoking and drinking, man. I started breaking into cars and tried breaking into a house. And I was with a buddy, and our friend and his grandma were out of town, and we were camping out on her back porch one night. We decided to try to break in. And needless to say, sirens went off and we took off, but the dude rolled on me. Obviously, he was closer to the kid. He snitched on me.
Yeah.
You want to say, got put on probation at 13, got charged with a felony. I pled down to a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm. And so at what age did you really start partying?
So when I moved in with my dad between 13 and 14, I retained a little bit of that youth, that childhood. I got involved with the neighborhood kids. I could have a life. I wasn't stuck in my room or in a corner. And so about probably 2 years after that, I started meeting more people in that neighborhood. So I'd say about 16, I really got heavy into smoking and drinking, and that became like a lifestyle. That became like, especially the drinking part, man. We couldn't go anywhere without drinking. Like weekends had to be drinking, going to a basketball game during the week had to be drinking, going to a football games on Friday, definitely loaded, It just, it became super heavy, Yeah.
Did you graduate?
I did. Thankfully, my senior year, I got kicked out of the high school and had to go to an adult ed, where I was able at that point to make up the credits I had lagged through my crap throughout the years prior, and I graduated on time with a diploma. So I was grateful for that opportunity, but it's not the same as being in high school, but
Yeah.
still, it didn't help actually. The atmosphere was way worse because that's where all the troublemakers were. So we would go smoke outside the building, go get high right outside the building.
So what happened after high school?
So, well, prior to that, I used to play a lot of sports outside of, school or during school and outside of school. And I got wrapped up in, I found pills at that point, Vicodin. And I found out I could take a few of those no matter what, like if I rolled my ankle or something and still play good, still be able to move. I felt invincible. And then, I kind of pulled my shit together my senior year and I graduated. And then I went off to join, the Marines. I had to get my mom, which I didn't join, but I went to Lansing and did all that shit and got to the point where I was supposed to be sworn in, and I'm sitting in this fucking room watching all these other people get called up to go get sworn in, and hours go by and my recruiter shows up and he's like, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We were supposed to send a waiver through because you were charged with a felony as a juvenile. Give me like 2-3 months and we can get you back up here and get you rolling, dude. My pride and like my ego at that point was just shot. Like I was embarrassed, and I fucking went back home and started partying, right away. Like numb that embarrassment. That's what I knew.
Yeah. Did you ever get into dealing?
I sold some weed for a little bit and some pills, and that's when it got really bad because I started taking the pills, then I started spending the money I was making to get more pills, and then before you knew it, like the Vicodin and shit just completely took over my life. And then you start losing everything. Every penny you get goes towards it.
Yeah. Do you ever get locked up?
Yeah. Probably, yeah. As soon as I hit 18, pretty much within that year of getting back from getting dismissed from being able to go join the military, I started partying and then got wrapped up in pills and Oxycontins. And dude, there was no limits to what I would do, and drinking to get what I fucking needed. I went to jail several times. It got really bad close to like 2009, where at that point I had tried heroin because I could not keep up with the pills or stay connected with the type of pill I was doing. And that was a game changer, man. And, I had been to jail a few times before that, nothing long, but I committed a bunch of felonies at that point. And then getting strung out on heroin, I decided to move to Tacoma, Washington for about a year to get off, and which I did. But then I got out there and drank like a fish because I was out there with some friends in the military. So, what do? They drink. And then I came home to take care of some legal issues that I had left, and it was only misdemeanors. I got out of jail, dude, and then I went right back to the dope. And then I broke into my grandfather's house to get at my uncle to steal some of his shit to sell to get dope, dude. And it ultimately landed me in jail again. And, I was facing, and this is actually probably the first instance in my life where a higher power, God, hit me. I was in jail looking at 38 months to 56 months as a minimum, going in front of this judge that was just known to sentence people over the guidelines, and just a cruel judge. And you've been to jail, you get, and at least over here, you get chaplains that walk through and talk to you and pray with you, and we used to try to hide from them and shit because we didn't want to deal with them. And one caught me slipping one night and started talking to me, and I'm real reluctant. I'm on my bunk with my sheet pulled up over me, like, but I'm chatting with him, and he's like, hey, can I pray with you? or like pray for you was his words. He goes, I'm not going to ask you to take Jesus right now. I'm not going to make you do anything. I just want to see if we can pray for leniency for you with the judge. So I got down, I went over there, and he prayed for me, and I didn't give it another man. Ended up going in front of this judge and looking at 38 months minimum. She ended up sentencing me to 24 months in prison with a 14-month stipulation that I had to serve at least 14 months, but I was eligible for boot camp with the reduced sentence she was giving me, which was shocking to me because this is a judge at that time that was absolutely known for hammering people above what they were supposed to. And, after the shock wore off of going to prison, when I got back to my cell, I kind of realized that God thing, man, there was something probably to that. So anyway, I got shipped out, and I went to prison for close to maybe 2 years, 20 months, 21 months, something like that.
Did you stay sober in prison?
No. I got in there and I wanted to do good. I was young, very unfamiliar atmosphere. There's probably a lot of fear there of the unknown and what was going to happen. You hear stories and all of that. I tried to get wrapped up in some church things. I picked up a Bible, and that lasted all but like a month or two, man. And then I soon found out that every drug on the street, there's the same or the equivalent in prison. And I was getting high on everything. I landed a good clerk job in there, so I was making decent money. And I got high. All the heroin, fucking pills, dude, drinking, all sorts of shit. Pretty much the whole time until they shipped me to boot camp about 18, 19 months in.
Wow. Any other problems in prison?
Yeah, I mean, dude, so my first issue I had in there, young white guy, I had a bunkie that was all wrapped up in the gangs in there, pretty big dude, fucking hit the pit and all that. And I pretty got my ass beat. He kept putting a knife in my locker, man, and I didn't know what to do about it. I just didn't know, because I felt like, if you go at him, I'm going to get stabbed or his gang's going to jump on me. I'm not going to make it out there. There's a lot of fear in that, man. And I ended up having to talk to an old school guy the last time he did it. And he was like, dude, you have to defend yourself. You have to fucking stick up for yourself, because if not, the rest of your stay is going to be absolutely miserable. And this dude, I'm 6'3", I was probably 160, 170 at that time, but this dude's probably 2 inches shorter than me, but easily pushing 200 and something. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Just fucking ripped and shit, dude. And I'm just not looking forward to this. So wait for him to get in. And I had this thing in my hand, and my first mistake probably was that I fucking threw it at him, and then I swung on him, dude. And then that was about all I remember. He fucking beat my ass all up and down that fucking cell. But the good thing out of that was, though, that he had seen that I guess I wasn't going to just let him fucking use me as a bitch in there, and didn't have an issue after that with anybody. And then, outside of that being my first experience with an altercation in there, and then get whooped on, it's not a fun one, but, dude, I seen a lot of people get stabbed at that facility, man. It was a level 2 and a lot of lifers in there. And there was one I remember in particular that sticks with me, dude. I work in the chow hall as a clerk, and eating lunch, on break down there, and this guy's sitting at a picnic table away from me with his back to me, and I'm facing him, facing that way, dude. And this other fucking dude just walks by, or slowly walking in between the tables behind this guy, and just fucking reaches out and sticks him in the neck with a fucking chain, man. And you just see just blood squirting out. That was pretty terrifying. Fuck it. It was terrifying, man. It was and to find out it was pretty much over nothing too, just because one guy was looking at a parole after being in there almost his whole life.
Fuck,
man.
So what was it like getting out after your stay? Like, did you take that mentality with you?
So yeah, a big piece of, you'll hear too with a lot of people, even just being in jail, like not having your back to anybody, not fucking sitting in the middle of a room with your back to, anybody. You have to see both fucking doors, or the door, like your exit. That was hard to break. Looking over your shoulder, just keeping, and it can be used as an asset today, being aware of your surroundings, watching everything around you and keeping your eye on everything else. But man, that's kind of a hindrance too. Like I think it brought a mentality of seriousness to me. Like, I almost like I forgot how to have fun, just to let go and let loose.
Yeah. So, you got into college after you got out.
I did. It was a community college. This was, I got out 2012. They were handing out all this money to sign up for college, and it sounded like a good idea to me because I didn't have help getting out of prison. That whole part, like there was supposed to be some Michigan Parole Reinitiative Act or some shit that was supposed to help with jobs and shit. And it was bullshit. And so this college thing came up, and I was like, fuck it, I'll sign up for it. And I did. And started going, was pursuing psychology. And, I lasted a semester. I did well. And then, my best friend passed away from an overdose of heroin. And that kind of, that was September 25th, 2012. And that kind of sent me down in a spiral from there. Didn't care I was on parole, didn't give a shit about anything else, and, my way to solve it was let's go get high on the same shit that killed them. And that's what I did. And I just kind of flunked out of college, a bunch of fucking money for that still. And I just kind of set in motion for the next 4 years, getting locked up, parole violation, getting out, doing all right, fucking going to get high again, back in jail, getting out, and for pretty much the next 4 years.
Yeah. And you went to rehab, got involved in church.
Did. Yeah, well, yeah, during this time, this in and out between 2012 and 16, when I got out and I was doing good, I was getting involved in a church. I met a church, a pastor that came to the facility I was at, and I started going to his church. So I started to learn about God. And I'd go on and off for those few years. And, in and out of other, like a Celebrate Recovery during that time. And yeah, dude, I ended up somehow making it off parole in 2016. And I think it was in April 2016, I made it off parole, dude. And by September, I was homeless and like strung out on heroin again. Living on the streets, like behind buildings and shit, using like little cardboard boxes to lay on, and just robbing and stealing from stores, committing retail frauds. And ended up deciding, like through a series of events that which I believe was God ordained, to ask for help, or to get help, and the way it was set up, a girl I had been seeing prior to that had called me one morning with information about what we have up here called Swimba, to get into rehab. And it was random as fuck, and I decided to latch onto it, and I went and, got sober, or got abstinent, I should say. I went to rehab, got out, and got back involved with my church at that time. And no ties to the law for, I don't know, about 6 months. And all of a sudden I'm at church, and actually at a meeting called Celebrate Recovery. and the cops show up because someone had tipped him I was there, and I had a felony. I had a warrant for a retail fraud. So I went with them. I went to court the next day and was released, and they were charging me with a felony retail fraud because of 3 of them on my record, or more than that. But you get 3 of the same misdemeanor, they can charge you as a felony here. And I was in the middle of doing good, so that was into 2017. Get charged with that, get put on probation, and then I end up going back out again. Not really. And like, I love the Celebrate Recovery thing, but it wasn't sustaining enough for me. It was, a meeting a week, and my willingness wasn't there, or desperation. And I ended up going back out.
For anyone that might not know, what is Celebrate Recovery?
Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step Christ-centered program. It has, for each step, there's a biblical comparison to it. So there's scripture-based with each step. There's 8 principles. And it's just a 12-step program like your NAAA, but we just recognize Christ as our higher power there. Which fit for me, And around that time is when I used to, my relationship with God during that time, I thought I was building one up here. It was in my head. I seen these people act a certain way, dress a certain way. And I thought if I kept up the appearance and said the right things, it made me a Christian. It made me a believer. And then I went out on probation, and then they put me in jail and offered me 6 months. And that's when I was like, I asked for help. And their solution for that was drug court, which is an 18-month program, intensive. They introduce you to meetings and therapy and all sorts of shit. And so I got in that, and that's when I really, I got introduced to like the other 12-step programs, AA and NA. I had been forced into it years back, but I only went like once or twice and bailed. But even at that point, I lasted a year on drug court before they kicked me out. I was going to the meetings. Were you
abstinent that whole time?
I was abstinent. Well, no, let me take that back. I was abstinent off all the hard drugs, but I had a prescription to Neurontin. And I thought that was like, I found out you could take a few of them and get high. So I was manipulating my prescription, which then ran out. So I was buying them off the street, getting high off Neurontin until they caught on to it. So no, I wasn't even abstinent, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that was just a matter of time, putting something else in my system that ultimately wasn't going to satisfy what I really wanted inside.
You ever get mad at God during this time?
Yeah, I questioned a lot, actually. Because especially being involved in church and then a CR program, like instead of, it was always somebody else's fault, right? Like, why can't God remove this from me? Not thinking there was work to be done, that it was me, I blamed him. I see it working for other people, not knowing what else they're doing, but why won't he remove this from me? And there's a lot of frustration. Definitely cussed him out a few times.
So
which I still do.
Yeah. Nobody's perfect.
Right.
So where's your family during all of this? Like, do you have any contact with your mom at all?
So my mom was hit and miss through the years, because I have robbed her countless times. Like, I'd get sober, and that's my mom. She would take me in, and trust me around, and I would use what happened in my childhood against her to manipulate the situation, to get her to feel guilty, to give me money or let me in her house. And then, like the last straw was probably, I don't know, years back, but I stole everything from her. I sold her mom's wedding ring. I pretty much put her in bankruptcy, and she lost a house over my shit. And she's at this time in 2000, where we're roughly at is 2018 when I joined drug court, she was happy she was there, but hesitant, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then my dad's been hit and miss in my life. My grandfather, as far as like my family, and my sister Miranda has been like, they stood by me through a lot of shit. Always holding out hope, always having a boundary, but being there in the same time when I was doing right, never giving up on me.
So, let's see here. So you got kicked out of drug court and sentenced to another year.
Yes, in prison.
Yeah. So, and then you got out and COVID hit. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I did that year, which I stayed sober, by the way, or abstinent. I didn't use in there. I built a relationship with God that was still pretty much in my head. There were some good moments in there where I probably felt it in my heart, but I didn't capitalize on it. I got out and I did what I do, man. I linked up with a chick, and that's where that was my go-to too without drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was sober or abstinent at that time, it was like I found my identity in women. Like I was only worth something if I was in a relationship. And I did. COVID hit, everything fucking shut down. And I used that as an excuse to go fucking out, man, and start using again. I ended up in a car crash about 6 months in. I crossed 5 lanes of traffic going 50 and went through a fence into a telephone pole and got roughed up pretty bad and ended up in jail. Obviously, they took me to the hospital in jail, did 30 days. They let me out. And that's when like the clubs started opening up, or like the 12-step groups. And I knew from my introduction in drug court where to go. And so I went and started going to meetings and was doing really well for a while, man. But still that desperation wasn't there. I had already sat and dried out in jail, so I didn't capitalize on that desperation, So I was already feeling good. So why put in the fucking work, fully? And it was about a year through that, close to 10, 11 months, man, which I ended up started dating my fiance now during that time. And I proposed to her 1 year ago, actually this coming Sunday. And then we decided to set up a wedding in a few months from that time. And a bunch of money was funneled into, to go set shit up. And like life was good.
Yep.
Then the obsession returned, man. The spiritual malady was kicking my ass, and I didn't realize it.
So you stopped going to meetings?
No, I was going to meetings. I just didn't do the work.
Yeah.
I didn't do the fucking steps, man. I didn't get inside. I didn't clean out. I didn't make amends. I just wasn't working with alcoholics. I wasn't fucking reading anything. I was just going to meetings, and that's what. I don't like that phrase, meeting makers make it.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah. For
a real alcoholic and a real addict, that does not work.
That does not work for you, and it didn't work for me either. But, so hang on a sec now. Before we get to it, you keep on saying something about I had God in my head, but not in my heart. Can you expand a little on that? Like, what does that mean?
So, the best way I can say that is if I can think all day about God, but if my feet aren't matching it, if I'm not talking to him, if I'm not praying to him, if I'm not having faith in him, like, is it really a real relationship? Like, is it real? Because every time something good happened in my life, I never... like it was always my will. I did that, not God. And that was fake. It was just a mental thing. I just kept telling myself in my head I was a Christian, but I never I guess believed in my heart about it. There was no work put in. There was no faith there. There was no talking to him. It was act the part in front of people, or say what I'm supposed to, dress the part, you know,
Yeah.
look the part.
Mm-hmm. So do you give all credit for the good things in your life to a higher power?
I do. Absolutely, God.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what finally did it for you?
So I overdosed and almost left. Like I was very grateful someone walked into me or on me in the bathroom on the floor. I was purple, but even that wasn't enough at that point. I continued. I went home that fucking night, and this is the powerlessness of it, man. I went home that night and tried shooting up after I got out of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I just almost died 8, 9, 10 hours earlier, and I'm still trying to do that.
Were you trying to die, or were you just trying not to feel?
I was just trying to get high. I just like the fucking feeling at that point, you know, like that's the truth of it. I just like the way it made me feel. And so that continued for a few more weeks, and my girl, she stayed with me through this, man. And the kids had to watch all of this. And finally, like, I went to rehab for her again. I went to rehab again for her, not for me, for her. Got out, ended up getting high again within a couple of days. Carried on, and finally one night, you know, she had it, and I love her to death, but she's stubborn as shit. And like when she says something, she means it, man. And she kicked me out. Like, and we've had this conversation in the past where like if I use, I'm gone. Like she can't do that with the kids and everything. And so she put me out, man. Having to say goodbye to the boys. It hurt saying bye to her, but I was able to be frustrated enough for a minute, you know. But saying goodbye to the 9-year-old or the two kids, they were 8 and 10 at that time, and watching one of them like ask me, does that mean you're not coming back? It hit me hard, man. And I burst into tears and I walked away. And that night, dude, I left with $60. I got dope and it didn't do it. And then I conned a friend in that night to meet me and giving me more money. And I went and fucking tried to get more dope, dude. And I did it all one shot and trying to go out, essentially trying to fucking take my life. I didn't want to live. I hurt. I was just defeated. And I fucking woke up or came to the next morning on a fucking park bench across the restaurant. And it just hit me that I had to do something, that if I couldn't go on like this. I was going to fucking die and I didn't want to die. And God, that's when I kind of understood that, like, I should have died. You know, fentanyl's everywhere. And like, it almost killed me months before that. And now I just happen to get a half now and I do it all and I can't fucking die. That's God. So I called the rehab and I booked myself in, and my girl ended up calling me a couple hours later and telling me to come home. And when I got here, you know, we talked about it and she wanted me to go to rehab, which I had set up and made that call already. And we walked it out for the next 2 weeks until I could get in. And
you stay clean?
In rehab?
No, like in those 2 weeks leading up.
No, fuck no. No.
No,
because well, that's the shitty thing here too, man. Like, in order to get in, to get the most of your days that insurance covers, you've got to come in and drop dirty. You've got to be fucking dirty. But they make you wait 2 weeks. Yeah. You have to wait 2 weeks to get...
That's a bad policy right there.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I could have tried to detox on my own, having to wait 2 weeks to get in. Went through fucking hell, which is doable. If the willingness is there, I'm sure it's doable. But then I would have only been afforded 5 days inside.
Wow.
So they only gave me 9 days, which my insurance covered. And 4 days. 4 days residential, 4 to 5 days detox is what they were doing. So if I came in high still, I could get 9 days. 5 days in detox, 4 days in residential. So no, I stayed. I maintained where I wasn't sick for 2 weeks. Went through, got out, and this is where I really understood the mental obsession part.
Yeah.
I I got out. I called the guy I was working with, my sponsor at that time, man, and he said, you should go to a meeting. And I told him no. I said I was good. And then hours later that night, like I'm laying in bed, I started getting all finicky and anxious. I can't sleep. It feels like DTs are coming. And like, so I was on Subutex until I left. And like, I couldn't fucking sleep, dude. And all I did was want to get high. And then all of a sudden I had this thought, well, everybody's sleeping. I can get high and no one will know. So I walked out of the room. I stole money from her purse in the car, took her kid's phone, and I tried calling a dope man, and he didn't answer. I had tons of them, I could have called, but that's when God, and this is where I say God gave me 8 seconds of clarity. I understood in that moment, if I continued down this line, if I kept pursuing these numbers, I was going to get to dope, but somehow, some way. But I was also going to lose my family. I was going to fucking die. Everything I just went through, that 8-9 days in rehab, the health and detox, I'd have to do all over again. Because if I do it once, I'm not going to stop. And I was able to put the money back in the phone back, man. And got up the next day. My sponsor at that time was out of town. And I was just completely fucking desperate, man. Like, I was desperate and ready to do anything. And I went to this guy who I had avoided for the 3 years around there. And I was just like, I approached him and said, hey, do you still do those meetings? And this fucker just walked up the stairs from our home group meeting. And he was like, no, he like looked at me and he was just like, no, what you're going to do is shut the fuck up. And like, you're going to be here Sunday at 7 a.m. You're going to fucking go home. You're going to pray about it. Mm-hmm. And if you show up Sunday, you better be fucking ready to work. And he just dismissed me. Dismissed me.
We're going to take a quick break.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. It doesn't work for people. Some people it doesn't work for. But when you start saying, shut the fuck up and sit the fuck, that puts a smile on my goddamn face, man. Because that's exactly what I needed. Like, I feel that. Like, that makes me, like, tear up because I needed my ass kicked. So tell us about it.
So, this dude, like, I avoided him for 3 years to this. Know that, because he's notorious. I mean, he's loud. He's about the fucking book. He's about the process, about your feet moving, not what the fuck your mouth is saying. Mm-hmm. And I have avoided him because I thought he was a dick. And, dude, but when you're that desperate, like, I knew if I didn't start doing something right then, I was going to fucking use and I was going to die and I was going to lose everything. And, I didn't even think about the guy I was working with at that time, to be honest. I wanted to save my own ass. I went home, I fucking prayed, and I showed up Sunday at 7 a.m., man, and we did, let me say this. First thing I noticed, I walked down into the basement where our home group is, and I noticed 3 fucking people were there for me. And I was there for a 1, 2, 3, or a qualifying.
What's a 1, 2, 3?
The first 3 steps, a qualifying period. You go through the first 3 steps essentially to figure out if you're a real alcoholic or addict. And then once you kind of qualify yourself or understand that, you work through the book, directly through the book, page for fucking page through the first 3 steps, man. It's amazing what that did for me too, because it shows you a path in there.
Tell us a little bit about the first 3 steps. Just take 2 minutes and just tell us what that journey's like.
So understanding I was powerless was huge. Like I was that, like, you make that decision before you even fucking step into the room, unless the court pushes you in. Like, my willingness to come back with nothing telling me to, I understood I was fucking powerless over this shit. Mm-hmm. And my life was unmanageable. Mm-hmm. The second step, my favorite part of that is the second step proposition. Came to believe in a power greater than myself. I was willing at that point. But you're faced in that process. The 1, 2, 3 is either God is or he isn't. Either he's everything or he's fucking nothing. And you make that declaration down there, man. Like, you choose that day to say God is everything, but it has to be followed by action, I learned. And then the third step, prayer, man, working through that book and landing in the third step, turning your will and your life over to the care of God. You hit your knees, man, and you do it. There's more in depth with it. It took 3.5 hours to go through that process. But what it did is it gave me a foundation for the first 3 steps in the literature and where it's at and how the book is fucking written in masterly detail. There's a pathway through that book, man, and it's direct when someone shows you that, a sponsor. And, one part of that, at the end of that process, it talks about we launched. When you wrap up your third step and it goes into the fourth, it talks about launching. It doesn't say we go home, we feel good, we take a fucking break. We take 6 months, and this is my experience. It doesn't say we take 6 months to write a 4-step out and wait another 6 months to drop the fucker. The book tells us it's a life and death errand.
What's a 4-step?
An inventory: resentment, fear, and sex. First thing I wrote out was my resentment. I walked out of that basement. I went home. I talked to my lady for a minute. I went back outside with a pen and fucking paper. I prayed to God, dude, and I stayed out there for 4 hours, 5 hours, crying and writing and screaming and laughing. And I fucking spilled my guts on a piece of paper that everything. This 4-column inventory, but I wrote a 3-column inventory, and you do the 4th with your sponsor, man. What happened, and or who was it, what happened, and how it made me feel. And every fucking event from the earliest time I could remember to today, and through everything that popped in my head. And it, I did that day.
Those are the 3 columns. What's the 4th?
My part in it. Like what's there? What I was forced to see my part in shit. And that's with my God. That's with God and my sponsor. We sit down there. I see that and the defect that's there. It was funny, man. Cause I did that Sunday, I wrote my 4th out that Sunday. A few days later, we fucking dropped it. The 5th step, I met with my sponsor, and we went one-on-one downstairs, prayed in, talked to God. And then I started going through this inventory and spilling all this shit out, all these resentments, and he tricked me. He told me in the beginning, when he told me to write, he was like, this is your chance to get back at everybody that's ever pissed you off and encourage me to write,
Yeah.
So I fucking did, dude.
Oh, you all are going to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they did.
Oh, they did. Right. The fucking, I'm dropping it, man. And I start seeing this trend. Like, my dad made it. Okay. I'll share that. My dad was the first person on my list. And then as I'm sharing and sharing and sharing, like, there was just this fucking moment where I realized I resented my dad because I was my dad. The same shit I was mad at him for doing, I was doing. I seen my part. Like, it was just like jaw dropping, man. And we took a break, and I'll never forget this. A guy outside that knew I was dropping it, I walked out with like a smile on my face, like it's revealing, and this guy's like, oh, some serious 4-step you did. You're not even crying or something. And I was just baffled. I'm like, why the fuck am I like, and I know some people get to tears in theirs, and that's great. But my experience with it was like, I seen my fucking point and my part in all of this. Like, I seen the victim I was choosing to play, like, and being pissed at somebody for the same shit I was doing. And like, to realize how stupid that is, like, it was just relieving, man, that I was choosing this. And so I was like, man, you're okay. Like, it's hard to cry about some shit I seen that I caused or I did or that I'm doing, like,
my first 5th step took 6 hours.
Yeah.
I had to do it in 2 sessions. My sponsor's like, that's enough. You come back next week. Yeah.
Right. And that's like, I love the process because we did my resentment first, and then we did my fear and sex, which are all intertwined. And the fear was sex and fear were bigger than my resentment one. That's where I really discovered some defects, and definitely where I figured out my identity was in relationships. My worth came out of relationships. I had value only because I was in relationships and shit. But when I finished that resentment inventory and I went home and did the 6th and 7th, you know, reviewing everything we went over, getting with God, asking him to remove this, all the ones that stand in the way of being utilized by him. You know, at this time, I couldn't sleep, right? Whatever shit I was doing, the drugs I was putting in my system really fucked me up, okay, like physically. And I couldn't sleep. I go home to do this 6th and 7th step, man, and like I thought I fucked up because I'm in this hour. It's the only time in the book where the book will tell you to take time off, and it still has you fucking doing something. And I fell asleep for about 15 minutes in that, and I thought I was in trouble. I thought I fucked my 7th step up, 6th and 7th step. You know, like, you're not supposed to sleep. You're supposed to be talking to God and taking this time to reflect and shit. And
become
it
willing.
Took me a couple days, right? And it took me a couple days to really get a bigger picture. That because when I woke up, dude, because I couldn't sleep hardly at all prior to that, but I woke up refreshed when I was doing that 6th and 7th. And like, I still didn't see it at the time. I was more worried about being, you know, I fucked it up. And between God and my sponsor at that point, I realized that was a fucking gift from God. God allowed that to happen. I can't fall asleep at night, but somehow during this process, you're going to let me close my eyes for 15 minutes and give me the best sleep I've had in months. And 15 minutes, like, that just showed me I was on the right track.
So not everybody that's watching understands or knows the steps. So just tell us, what is step 6? What is step 7? Just like,
off the top of my head, I'm going to fail.
I know. So am I. I know the 6 and 7 is basically become willing and give it to God.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the gist of it. And many argue that step 6 is when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, that's where you kind of reflect and you go over everything you've done up to this point, and you make sure you haven't missed anything. You read, you know, the steps again, and, you know, your ABC and your inventory, and you reflect on that, and you become willing or ready to give it to God. And then you ask God to remove it from you. Give it all to him.
So let's jump ahead. We're getting a little long on time here. So after going through that, we're getting pretty close to today, I think. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you maintain, how you get through the days today when your thoughts start going sideways or when something out of your control goes sideways? Tell us about that.
Today I go to God.
Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? How do you go to God?
Prayer, meditation. I get into the literature, which I definitely feel is God ordained. There's tools. I use the 2nd step proposition for fears that are overwhelming in my life. My fiance is in the program. I've got a good group of friends I can bounce, people I'm accountable to that I can bounce things off of and talk with if I can't solve it with God. My sponsor, most definitely, he is, I absolutely love the way he does it, man. He does it how the book does it. He runs his sponsees like it was done in the beginning, man. We come straight out of the book. We take those fucking tools in the book and what the literature says and put it into action like it tells us. You know, reading 84 through 88, reading page 30 keeps me grounded in the first step, making sure I'm not being delusional. Page 86 was where it started. Like, page 86 in the big book is what gave me transferred from this thought up here of God being in my head to my heart. Practicing that upon awakening. And when we retire at night, I get with God. The first thing I do in the morning is I talk to God and think about what I'm doing today and ask him to take me out of self and keep me from my, you know, the negative thinking, the self-will, the victim shit, like guide me through the day. Then at night, I reflect on my fucking day. And do I owe anybody amends? Was I wrong? Did I just reflecting on the whole day with God and asking God to point things out to me that I might have missed. And if I messed up, I get a chance, to correct them. That started my foundation, and that's just become a practice now. And that keeps me, that 10th and 11th step every day, every night,
10 and 11?
Every morning.
You can't say 10 and 11 and then not tell us what they are.
10 and 11, man.
Yeah.
So
Step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to maintain our spiritual contact with, I'm going to mess that one up.
God as we understand him.
There it is. Praying only for a knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. There we go.
Yes. I should probably go back and reread these stuff, man.
Hard Knox Talks. We don't care.
But that's the cool thing about it, man. It's not so much of knowing what this shit says. It's the action.
It's the spiritual principles.
Yes. It's living this shit, not just saying it. Like the Knucklehead group, man, that I'm involved in, dude, is like, we're by the fucking book, man. And we've run it as close as we can to how, the first 100 did, to how the beginners did, man. We don't bullshit around. We don't we bam, bam, bam through the steps, man. And continue. We don't stop, man. It's a way of life.
Rigorous action. Got a comment coming in from my dear friend Terry. Terry, so good to see you tonight. Terry says, love this episode. Feels like I'm back in very early recovery and small town old school AA. The big book and the old timers saved me from myself.
Yes.
So we can find you on TikTok.
Yeah. Sober.Justin.
Yeah. And if you want to go after the show is done and just throw that in the chat there, feel free to do that. And go ahead.
So my home group, the Knuckleheads, two of us has started a podcast on Spotify, where the first season was going through the steps, sponsor, sponsee, and they're starting season 2. There's a couple I'm on episode 2 with that. We did a mini conference, was the first episode of this new season, but man, it's really good shit. It's just AA Knucklehead. It's Knucklehead without the K, the second K in Knucklehead. So if anybody's interested, it's worth listening to.
Right on, man. And again, if you want to go and throw a link in the chat after the show is over, feel free to do that. That's all I got for you, man. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with tonight?
So I shared this with you earlier, and this is what's landed on my heart. And my sponsor said this a few weeks ago, and we're actually getting it put on hoodies. We don't have to agree to love each other. And that means our paths might be different, but we all have the same destination. Whether you're AA, NA, CR, maintenance, you do SBOT, whatever the fuck your path in recovery is, man. We don't have to agree on our paths. We can have different paths, man, but love each other. Right, I don't give a fuck how you're doing or what you're doing to save your life, man. Just you're worth saving. Do it. Live, man.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Justin. Your story is incredible. Thank you for sharing your experience with the program. We very much appreciate getting that out into the community, and we'll let you go. Take care, my friend.
Take care. Thank you.
There's power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitch, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We can recover. There is a safer way, and we're here to show you how. Good night.